1.
And we're back. I'm your host, BKP. Good morning from the office, North Georgia's only live online morning show. Now, as I told you, we have a very busy morning. It is election time, and joining us now by phone, Julianne Thompson, Republican strategist and political commentator. Also, Julianne has worked in the House of Representatives and was communication director for the Georgia Republican Party. Julianne, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're talking about the governor's race in Georgia here, Brian Kemp and Stacey Abrams. Let's get right into some things that we've been discussing already, public safety, but I'm going into some polling numbers that I looked at recently and some of the discussion. Let's talk about women. Can we go there first? Women and voting for Brian Kemp. Why are you supporting Brian Kemp? Why would you encourage other women in the state of Georgia to vote for Brian Kemp?
Sure. Well, again, first of all, thank you so much for having me this morning, Brian. And I want to begin by saying that this is a very somber day in our nation's history as we remember the victims of 9/11 and the day that changed America forever. I was reminiscing about that yesterday and today. I remember exactly what I was doing. I remember every single moment that unfolded that day as though it were yesterday. And it is something that changed all of our lives forever. And of course, for my daughter, who was a toddler at the time, and my son, who would not even be born for several years later, those are history lessons for them, but they're real life lessons that we actually lived. And so I think it's important that we remember the victims and that we never forget what happened so that it doesn't happen again.
Well, I couldn't agree more, and I think we all remember that morning, 9/11/2001, and I also I opened the show also remember 9/11, not just 2001, 2012, where 4 Americans with Ambassador Stevens was killed in Benghazi. So,
yes.
Well, moving on to campaigning and elections, because for somehow I like politics and elections. I don't know. I admit to that. I think I'm one of the few that admit to politics and elections I enjoy. But I want to know why you are supporting Brian Kemp, and why do you think women should vote for Brian Kemp?
Well, I think that women should vote for Brian Kemp for a variety of reasons. First of all, I think that most of us are intellectually insulted when the left insinuates that we want to vote based on our reproductive systems instead of what is actually important to our community and to our country. American women, Georgia women, we are concerned about the same things that men in Georgia are concerned about. We are concerned about a strong economy, about job creation, about reducing regulations. We're concerned about public safety, about national and state security, and preserving the kind of community that we want our children and our children's children to grow up in. And Brian Kemp is the only candidate that has a history of working toward those things to make Georgia a better place to raise a family and to also keep Georgia the best place to do business in the country. And those are all issues that are extremely important to women, and particular issues as to why I support him. And I am just honored to do so and to be able to speak to you this morning about that.
Let me ask you this question, because talking about public safety and some concerns around the country right now. Georgia, actually, it's not legal to be a sanctuary city in the state of Georgia, actually, but there are many places in Georgia that act like a sanctuary city, and the mayor of Atlanta basically just named Atlanta a sanctuary city the other day by discontinuing the relationship with ICE and asking for immediately the 5 ICE detainees to be removed from Atlanta jails immediately. How concerning, how are you concerned about the mayor basically naming Atlanta a sanctuary city, discontinuing relationship with ICE, And that's spilling over to outlying communities around Atlanta, some of the cities around Atlanta. Also, speak on that if you would.
Sure. Well, I think it's very, very concerning. I mean, first of all, we are a nation and we are a state of law and order. And that includes following all the laws of our land, including coming to this country legally. And, there's a big problem when local politicians take this into their own hands and decide for political purposes that they're somehow going to ignore federal law. The fact of the matter is, if someone is guilty of a crime, then they should be prosecuted for that crime. And to talk about the fact that we should disassociate with ICE is just beyond the pale. And, Brian Kemp he has fought for our rights. He has fought to end sex trafficking, to reduce violent crime. He is tackling public safety reform, and he has detailed plans to dismantle street gangs, to fight illegal immigration. And he is the kind of governor that will work hard and work in coordination with ICE and other state and federal organizations to try to reduce the amount of crime in Georgia, instead of providing the kind of policies that will actually increase it and make Georgia a less safe place to live. Brian Kemp is committed to making Georgia a safer place to live.
The reason I actually do not like having the discussion of why women in certain areas, why the gender, race, and the polling we have to look at and drill down in these elections. But some of the polling says that Republican women, let's go up through Buckhead, we'll call it there, the 400 corridor, Republican suburban women will be a major key in this election for Brian Kemp. And when you speak about what are things, when you speak about public safety, that you want to speak directly to, let's say, that group of voters that may not feel totally connected right now with President Trump or maybe some things in the Republican Party, or feel Kemp's immigration policies that he's talked about make them nervous? Why should they be interested in their public safety for voting for Brian Kemp? The direction I'm going with that.
I do. Well, first of all, I think it's important to remember that Georgia is one of the major hubs for sex trafficking in the entire country. And it is important to have a governor who understands how to end that, to combat that, to dismantle street gangs, to reduce that violent crime, and work hard to end sex trafficking in Georgia. And I think that those are issues that are extremely important to all women, not just suburban women. But yes, it is true that I agree that suburban women will play a huge impact in this election and in the midterms in general. And that's why I think it's important to talk about all of these issues. But I think that we do women a great disservice and an injustice by the way that the mainstream media always insinuates that we vote based on reproduction, and that's just simply not true. And I also believe that many polls are skewed. I think we saw that in 2016 when all the polling said that Hillary Clinton was going to be the next president of the United States, and that did not pan out. And I think the fact of the matter is that women are committed to keeping their families safe. They're committed to opening businesses and running those businesses and building the kind of life and the kind of future that they want to pass on to their children. And Brian Kemp is the candidate that embodies all of those things and has the history to show for it. And he led when he was a senator. He led on courthouse security, and he partnered with law enforcement leaders to keep families safe. When he was in the state Senate, he was chairman of the Public Safety and Homeland Security Committee. He has a solid record of working on these issues that are important to women, like public safety. And we are going to be getting this message out over the next couple months as we lead up into November. But Brian Kemp, as we go forward and we talk about these issues over the next couple months, women will understand and they will appreciate the fact that Brian Kemp is the candidate that can do these things.
All right. Well, let me ask you this because I've known you for several years, and you've been on the show before, and you're a political strategist, and you do study these campaigns. Why would you say, or not? Would you say, or give me what if Stacey Abrams is going to plan to increase public safety? What would you tell the voters when having the two choices between Brian Kemp and Stacey Abrams? Well, I've talked about public safety and the concerns we have as Georgians, but what are some of the other sides where you feel Stacey Abrams is not going to focus on public safety, or things would get worse where Stacey Abrams is concerned if she's governor? Or can you speak to that side of why you feel she would not maybe do a good job with public safety?
Well, absolutely. First of all, she has a plan to end cash bail for certain offenders, and I think that is a very scary notion in the state of Georgia. I think that if we are ending cash bail, we give people no incentive to return to court. And, she may harp on the fact that she is focusing on nonviolent crimes, but those crimes that she's focusing on include theft and indecent exposure and other types of crime that lead to more violent crimes and that put our children at risk. And she's committed to this type of liberal agenda, and she would prefer for Georgia to be more like California than like what we have become under Governor Nathan Deal, which is a safer place to raise our families, a better place to do business. And she is just not right for the state of Georgia. She will make this a more dangerous place to live.
Well, I mean, I hear that. The cash bail does concern me, myself, the cash bail, several other things in this race, but the cash bail concerns me, that there would be no incentive to come back to end cash bail. And that's correct. Am I correct on that? Her focus would be to end a cash bail program?
That is correct. That is correct.
One more thing I'd like to ask in Georgia, because I know in Georgia here, I guess because Julianne, we're not downtown Atlanta, and I am in North Georgia, where I still bump into most people that support the President of the United States. Jokingly, my mother said, in the friends that she has, or the people she knows that they support the president, she didn't know anybody didn't support the president until she turned on the TV. And the TV tells us. So I do know there's people out there that don't support the president. I guess where I'm getting at is how do you feel the support is still for the president of the United States as you travel around Georgia in your job?
Sure. If you don't mind, could I go back to what we were talking about just a few minutes ago? Because I also wanted to add that
Sure.
Stacey Abrams walked out on a bipartisan bill to end sex trafficking, and she also, during her time in the legislature, avoided different votes that would protect our children and voted against a bill that would ban registered sex offenders from living within 1,000 feet of schools. That's basically fighting for sex offenders instead of fighting for our children and for Georgia families. And I think that it's very important to point those things out and for people to understand that going forward. But regarding your question concerning the president, I have always said that if you want to find out how people really feel about politics, you don't go by the talking heads on television who argue with each other. You don't go by political pundits. You go to your son's football or baseball game and you sit on the bleachers with other parents and you listen to them. And I do that on a regular basis. I have a 13-year-old son that plays football, basketball, and baseball. So I'm on those bleachers all the time. And I can tell you without a doubt that the president has overwhelming support from people that I talk to. Now, yes, there are some people that do not like the president, obviously, but that always happens. But compared to the way that the media portrays this is just absolutely ridiculous. The people are enjoying job security and job growth. People are enjoying a strong economy and less regulation. And people are enjoying more national security, and we are in a much better position than we were just a couple of years ago, and we're definitely under, a much better position than we were during the last administration. So people are in support of Donald Trump. Like you said, there's always going to be people that aren't, but I believe he enjoys tremendous support among most people. And I think that we're going to be able to see that in the midterms. That being said, that doesn't mean we take it for granted. That doesn't mean we don't work like we're way behind, because that is what someone who wants to win an election should do. And so that's what we need to be committed to doing, is working hard and getting out the vote for our candidates that embody those values. And so I think that that's important to remember going forward.
Well, yes, you're exactly right. The talking heads on all of the networks that spend as much time as they can running down the president and trying to, what I say, manipulate people into thinking nobody out there likes the guy. Don't say anything because nobody likes him. But I'm amazed by your answer. I really am, and I have to double down on that, because people will ask me where I get my information, and I will make a joke and I'll say Friday night on the fence line. And they said, what's that mean? I said, you go to Friday Night Football, and the fence line around the perimeter of the football field where all the dads lean, you go over there in that group and I call it the fence line. Or on Saturday morning, Park and Rec. Our company covers a lot, our sports, Park and Rec, on Saturday morning. This Saturday morning, I'm going to be covering Park and Rec for about 10 hours. And I say, go in the bleachers at Park and Rec.
That's exactly right.
And I thank you so much for that, because I try to tell people all the time, I say, where'd you hear that? On the fence line. I call it the fence line. I think we both know, we see everybody lined up on the fence on Friday night. So thank you very much for that answer, because it is exactly what I try to tell people all the time. Well,
it's true. It's absolutely true.
Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on, talking about the public safety issues, and one thing, like I said, in the polling that I've been looking at, and some of the things that I've heard is, and I agree with you, I always say, why do these pundits disrespect the intelligence of women? I'm amazed by that all the time, they disrespect the intelligence of women, and they have single issues that they feel women vote on. And I'm glad you're able to clear that up for us this morning, Julianne.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, come back throughout the campaign. Come back anytime. And we're glad to have you on this morning. And now, are you crossing the state doing some campaigning, or are you just, what are you exactly doing right now? Are you with the campaign? What are you doing right now, may I ask?
Well, I am in support of our entire Republican ticket, and yes, I will be going across the state campaigning in support of all of them. And I am happy to be here this morning to talk about the Kemp campaign, and I hope to be back on very soon.
Thank you, Julianne. You have a nice day. We appreciate you very much. You're always welcome. That's Julianne Thompson, a Republican political strategist and political commentator. She also worked in the U.S. House of Representatives, and at one time was a communication director for the Georgia Republican Party. And I have to tell you, sometimes I wonder what I'm getting out of an interview. I'm serious. I want to go with that. Sometimes I wonder, what am I getting out of this interview? And I'm glad it was not me that said that when I said, are you finding throughout the state when you travel that President Donald Trump, where he stands with the voters in Georgia, hey, go to the bleachers, go sit in the bleachers, and I call it the fence line on Friday night, and go to Park and Rec and go to these different things, and you'll find out America's not that upset with the President of the United States, especially here in Georgia. Take a brief break, okay? When we get back, we're going to have an in-studio guest. Josh McCall will be with us. He is the candidate for the Georgia 9th Congressional District. So give us a couple minutes to get set up for him to be in here. And we're going to take a little break, and we'll be back right after these messages. Don't go away.